decide to step up to this kind of power, this kind of challenge, this kind of flying, crashing feeling, when you decide to get serious, there's only one place to come: the games of Super Nintendo. No one else creates this kind of experience, because no one else creates these kinds of games. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
The Super NES was launched in North America in 1991. The follow-up to the insanely popular Nintendo Entertainment System, the SNES sold almost 50 million units worldwide and remains incredibly popular today. This enduring popularity means that people will pay insane amounts of money for pieces of its legacy. Today we are going to be taking a look at the most costly carts out of the hundreds of official releases. As with the other videos in the series, we will not be discussing any cartridge variants or competition carts. The prices and rankings are based on data from PriceCharting.com at the time of production. Without further ado, it is time to take a look at the most expensive games for the Super Nintendo. You can wait to buy those tires. Number 10. Mega Man X3 was published by Capcom in 1996 and serves as the swan song to the 16-bit Mega Man games. I'm going to be completely upfront here. I am not terribly familiar with any of the Mega Man series. I didn't play any of the Mega Man games when I was a kid, and I didn't know anyone who had them. I didn't discover these games until high school when I started emulating older game consoles, and it wasn't really a series that I gravitated to because it is really hard and I suck at video games. Out of the X series, I am most familiar with the first title, but it has been quite some time since I've played it. Mega Man X3 is an action platformer that has you take control of X and Zero as they battle their way through Mavericks on their way to defeat Dr. Doppler. Like I said, it's been quite a while since I've played the first game, but from what I can remember, this one feels a whole lot like the first one. Now, that is not necessarily a bad thing. This is a very fun game. A very challenging, but fun, but really hard, but somehow still fun. I'm sure when I go back and finally play through all of the games, I will be able to really pinpoint the evolution of them and the variations in the installments. A lot of the musical tracks in the game were bangers and will definitely be popping up in future videos. The graphics are very well done and colorful with some pretty cool designs. You can run, jump, dash, cling to and scale walls, and fire your arm cannon and special weapons. You can charge up your arm cannon for a more powerful shot as well. I found myself really frustrated when I first started playing this one because I kept dying, but each time I played a level again, I would do much better. It feels really good to jump, dash, and shoot your way through these levels. I plan on playing through all of the Mega Man games one day from all the various series. This is definitely a good game that is worth a play. Is it worth $300? Probably not, but I would definitely pick it up for a reasonable price, and I would recommend that everyone at least give it a try in the Mega Man X Legacy Collection that was released in 2018 for a variety of platforms. Number 9. Oh, number 9. Number 9. Earthbound was published by Nintendo in 1995. It is a role-playing game that is known as Mother 2 in Japan. The first game, Mother, was not previously released in North America, and this sequel failed to find an audience in the United States despite a $2 million advertising campaign. Earthbound is set apart from its peers by its setting, which takes place in a more grounded contemporary world as opposed to a more fanciful one. In the game, you take control of Ness and 3 other spunky kids on a mission to save the world from certain destruction. This is a game that I have heard about for years but had never actually played it. I had heard about it mostly in relation to how expensive and sought after it was, and my friend Nick's incessant praise for the game. But did it live up to the hype? It's pretty freaking good. It did not take very long after booting the game up to be quite taken with it. The humor and storytelling engaged me right from the start. Reviews from the time of release criticized the graphical style of the game, but I think they complement the tone of the game quite well. I especially enjoy the psychedelic backgrounds that accompany the turn-based battles, which director Shigesato Itoi referred to as a video drug. The music is pretty fantastic in my opinion, full of a varied pool of influences, including the Beach Boys, Randy Newman, A Tribe Called Quest, Nirvana, and Prince. Composer Hirokazu Tanaka even noted Frank Zappa's Make a Jazz Noise Here as an influence, saying that Frank Zappa would have been the best at performing the music of Earthbound live, which I absolutely agree with. Earthbound's gameplay just sort of sucks the player in with its humor and toying with genre conventions. There are many instances of fourth wall breaking with the game designer speaking through NPCs, which add to the quirkiness and charm of the experience. The intent behind the goofy tone, modern setting, and genre spoofing was an attempt to reach non-gamers, and it is a shame that this was not very successful at the time of release. Earthbound is truly a classic with gameplay that holds up to this day. While playing, I was always compelled to keep going in order to see what happened next, what pop culture references popped up, and to see what ridiculous foe I encountered next. The skate punk became tame is one of my favorite lines from any video game, and you better believe that I'm going to write something with that being the title sometime soon, because that would make an awesome, song title, album title, something. I wonder if it's been done. It's probably been done. Everything's been done. While not perfect by any means, I think it gets pretty close, and the entire experience is one that I feel any fan of the RPG genre, or even video games in general, should give a try. $310 for a copy is pretty steep, but gosh darn it, I would really like to own this cartridge! Luckily, it is available through the Nintendo Switch Online service along with the First Mother. Play this. Number 8, number 8, number 8. Harvest Moon was published by Natsume in 1997. It is a farm simulation game where you take the role of a young man who inherits a farm in disrepair. The gameplay centers around clearing the land, planting crops, selling goods, and fostering relationships with villagers. My first experience with the Harvest Moon series was Friends of Mineral Town for the Game Boy Advance. A game for which I had great love for at the time, but even so, it was the only game in the franchise that I had ever played. I don't know why I never went back and played more of the games. That's very bizarre. I should have. This first entry, in my opinion, holds up fairly well today. This is just a series of games that hit it out of the park the first time out. This is one of those comfy games that are good to relax with, a game where you don't have to worry about combat and you just settle into farm life. The Harvest Moon series still continues to this day, but in two different forms. The original series continues under the Story of Seasons name, and the Harvest Moon name continues with new games published by Natsume. Natsume had localized and distributed the original games under the name Harvest Moon. In 2014, Marvelous, the company that produces the games, announced that the next game would be brought to North America by their American publishing brand Xseed, under the title Story of Seasons. Natsume, still owning the Harvest Moon name, began making new titles under that name, starting with the Lost Valley for the 3DS. I have not played any of these newer titles, but it seems that the new Harvest Moon games haven't been very well received. Newer games in the Xseed published Story of Seasons series seem to be at least slightly better regarded. If any of you guys have played any of the newer Story of Seasons games, or Natsume's new Harvest Moon series, let me know how they are. Are the new Harvest Moons as bad as I hear? Harvest Moon is a very good game that just happened to be released very late in the Super Nintendo lifespan. I don't know that I would pay $335 for a copy, but you better believe that this will get plenty of play and emulation, and I would recommend that anyone into the farming sim genre check it out. Number 7. Brony the Bronsaurus was published by Raya Systems in 1995. It is part of an educational game series by the company that also included the games Captain Novolin, Rex Ronin, and Packy and Marlin. You play as dinosaurs tangling with a force determined to destroy you. Your very own body! The main characters in the game suffer from asthma and have to manage their symptoms as they navigate the stages. There are dinosaurs scattered throughout the levels that will help you if you can answer an asthma-related question. That sounds really exciting, doesn't it? Brony the Bronsaurus is a platform game, and sadly, just not a very good one. I very much respect the aim of this game, educating kids about asthma, but it just did not nail the game part of that educational game label. The graphics and music are pretty subpar, but what really kills it for me is the control and level design. Your character just doesn't feel good to control as you navigate the stages. I never really felt very good about my jumps. The controls feel really unrefined and unsatisfying. And paired with that, the levels are pretty bland and uninspired. I really wanted to like this one. I'm really not sure why, but I really do think it's a neat idea. There was even a study by Stanford that seemed to imply that there were positive educational effects resulting from children playing this game. But as an adult looking for a good game experience, this one certainly falls flat. I do recommend that people check it out for the weird factor. It's different, you know, we don't get much of this stuff today, I guess. When you do, you will most likely get a good bit of enjoyment out of the sheer bizarreness of the experience, such as having cigarette smoke as a stage hazard and having to dodge this disgusting pig not wearing his N95. But after the initial laughs you get, all you will be left with is a pretty poor platform game with occasional multiple choice questions. I would never pay $340 for this, but I know that there are those that would. I assume there is a small group of people who actually played this as a child and have some actual nostalgia for it. Number 666. Number 666. Number 666. Number 6. The Hurricanes was published by US Gold in 1994. It is based on a cartoon of the same name that I have never heard of. The cartoon was produced by Dick and ran from 1993 to 1997. When I first started this one up, the US Gold and Probe Entertainment logos gave me a great cause for concern. Now that I've played it, I can happily report to you that I was pretty much on the nose. Alright, maybe it's a little harsh. In all fairness, this was actually much better than I was expecting. Certainly a better game than Brony, but that wasn't really hard to do. It does feel cheap though, in keeping with the impression I initially got from those two logos in the introduction. The Hurricanes is an action platformer where your character is equipped with a soccer ball as a weapon that can be used in a few different ways. I actually think the graphics are sometimes pretty nice, with some beautiful mullet action, and some of the music isn't bad, if a bit unremarkable. I like the idea of a soccer ball being the weapon a la Soccer Kid, but the game didn't really keep me inspired to keep playing. It's not without its charm, but I have a hard time believing that I will ever want to come back to this one in the future. Maybe if you are a fan of the source material, which must exist, considering how many seasons of the cartoon there were, then this might be worth a look. I would certainly never pay $350 for a copy, though. Pocky Rocky 2 was published by Natsume in 1994. I am a little unsure as to what genre to call this game. I don't know if it would be considered a shoot 'em up, or an overhead run and gun, or what. You take control of Pocky and some of her friends as you embark on a quest to save Princess Luna, because as we know, princesses are useless and stupid. Pocky can pick up power-ups to improve attack and defense, and pick up her partner in order to throw them for big damage. Pocky can also use magic to take control of her partner's mind and use the special abilities of that character while doing so. There are also shops in the levels where power-ups can be purchased and keys to be collected to open up chests. This is my first experience with the Pocky and Rocky series of games, but it made a great first impression. This is one of my favorite games that I've played in a while, and I definitely plan on going back and playing the first game very soon. I love the graphics and cute presentation of this one, but above all, I really love the gameplay. This is a super fun game that I highly recommend to anyone who loves games of the era. It really sucks that this one goes for $380, because I would really love to have this one in my collection. Maybe try to rent this one before you commit to buying. Number 4. Final Fight Ga was published by Capcom in 1994. This is a revised version of the 1991 port that had previously only featured Cody and Hagar. Too bad the system isn't powerful enough to feature all 3 characters though, because Cody is now absent from this game. There are more differences in this version beyond the character swap, such as new difficulty settings and new power-ups. This version was originally a Blockbuster exclusive rental, but eventually had a limited release elsewhere. Final Fight is a classic beat-em-up that is still fun to play to this day, and this version retains that for sure. Researching for this video, I kept catching myself inadvertently playing this game for very extended periods of time. This is still a fun game that holds up pretty well, as long as you don't mind the repetitive nature inherent in the beat-em-up genre. Is there any reason to seek out a copy of this cartridge though? Honestly, not really. While it is still a fun time, there are better ways to play the first Final Fight game, including the arcade original. If you are a big fan of the series, you should definitely give this one a whirl, just for the novelty factor, but if you are just looking for some Final Fight action, you'll probably want to look elsewhere. For the $400 this cartridge goes for, I could buy myself 100 packs of seafood snackers and this Super Mario limited edition statue. I think that's a better use of my money. Number 3. Metal Warriors was published by Konami in 1995. It was developed by LucasArts, largely the same team that developed Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It was apparently planned to be released as a first-party title by Nintendo before being switched over to Konami, who produced a limited quantity of the game. It is a platform run-and-gun game that has you taking control of Lieutenant Stone on a mission to defeat the invading army led by the dictator Venkar Amon in the year 2102. As Stone, you pilot a series of mech suits with different abilities in order to defeat your enemies and save the Earth. The graphics of this one are great. I think this game looks fantastic. There were several bangers in the soundtrack as well, meaning I will have to add this soundtrack to my collection. The gameplay is pretty challenging, but I don't think it ever really feels frustratingly insurmountable. Controlling your mech is very fun as you explore the levels, and you even have the ability to get out and run around without your mech. You're very weak while outside of your mech, but this will allow you to get into other mechs you find. There's a nice variety of power-ups to utilize as well. I really like the inclusion of destructible environmental elements and smacking down the little people with my beam saber. Whack! Metal Warriors is a great game that I never hear anyone ever talking about. I don't know that I had ever even heard of this before making this video, and that is a shame. If any of this looks interesting to you, find a way to play this. $430 is asking a bit much for a Super Nintendo game, but try to find another legal way to play this. It's time for number 2. Ooh. Hagan, The Final Conflict was published by Hudson in 1995. It is an action platform game where you play as a cyborg ninja hell-bent on revenge. Hagan has a selection of weapons including a sword and shurikens and screen-clearing magic attacks. He can also perform various moves like somersaults and wall jumps. I think the graphics are fine, maybe not amazing, but set the scene pretty well. I don't think any of the musical pieces stuck with me, but they weren't bad. The gameplay is where it's at though, and I quite enjoyed my time playing it. It's hard, for sure, but I think it offers enough to make the player want to keep trying, at least for a short while. I really enjoy the melding of traditional Japanese aesthetics with a futuristic setting. I mean, when you hear the words cyborg ninja together in one, like how can you not at least get a teeny bit excited? I didn't realize how much I needed those two words to go together in my life. I definitely got Shinobi vibes from this one, and that's never really a bad thing. Now, I don't know if this one is so expensive because of low sales or if there were a small amount of cartridges produced, but this one goes for a whopping $800. I can in no way justify that insane price ever, but if you like this type of action platform game, you should probably find some other way to play it. There's a lot of fun to be had with this. Time for number 1, it's time for number 1, it's time for number 1, number 1, number 1, number 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, number 1! Aero Fighters was published by Miko River in 1993. It is based on the video system arcade game that was published by Tecmo in 1992. Aero Fighters is a vertically scrolling shooter featuring pilots from different countries tasked with defeating the alien forces and saving the world. While I think it was really brave to have such an outlandish and bold new storyline for the genre, the gameplay doesn't do a lot to make it stand out from the pack. Each fighter has their own attacks, which is pretty cool, but the gameplay mechanics pretty much boil down to picking up power-ups, destroying enemies, and gathering currency for score. It has that seen this 1,000 times before feeling. But this is not a bad game, not at all. It's pretty well made, with some rocking tunes, and the graphics are adequate. I am terrible at shooters, but I know that I will play this game again in the future, and that says a lot about a game in this genre for me. I don't know how this will play for shoot-'em-up aficionados, but I found this to be quite difficult. Luckily, there is a difficulty option that helped me to learn the game and get further than I otherwise might have. The biggest problem I had with this game was the copious amounts of slowdown throughout. This game was constantly chugging pretty hard when the action got heavy, and that was a bit distracting. And it wasn't the good kind of shooter slowdown that helps me dodge bullets. It often just messed me up and caused me to run into something and die. The fact that someone would even consider paying $1,400 for a loose copy of this makes me question the future of humanity. But I did enjoy my time with it. It just wasn't $1,400 worth of fun, I guess. If you've never played it and you're a fan of shmups from the era, I think you should hunt down a way to play this one. Please let me know if this is actually as hard as it seems to me, or if I just suck. I assume that I probably just suck. And there we go, the top 10 most expensive games on the Super Nintendo. Have you guys played any of these games? Are you maybe even lucky enough to own some of them? There were a couple of these that I had never even heard of before, and they ended up being some pretty awesome games. There are just so many games from different consoles that are just buried deep in the library, just because a game might have gotten released late in a console's life, Or maybe there were just not very many made, and that's really a shame a lot of the time. I'm so glad that I live in the future and I can just legally find other cheaper ways to play these games. But that is one of the reasons I like to do these top 10 most expensive lists, because I get to play all of these games that I've never even heard of, and like I said, a lot of times they end up being very awesome. Sometimes not so much. But comparatively, I think the Super NES top 10 is pretty good, especially when compared to like some of those weird adult games we had in the NES list. And with that, I want to thank everyone for watching. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you next time. Bye. It is now time to shout out our awesome channel members. Thank you, Sad Vlad, Retro Kart Collector. You guys are awesome. Anyone interested in getting shoutouts and videos and other cool perks, make sure you check the join button down below. One day love will find you.